As our own Greg Palcott is in the middle of this melee right now. He's going to join us live right now on the phone. Greg?
Guys, we are totally in the middle of it. We're watching pro-Mubarak forces, maybe activists, maybe about 1,000 streaming into the square, throwing rocks, beating back the anti-Mubarak forces. What we're seeing now is civil war breaking out right here on the streets of Cairo. We, in fact, were put upon by about 20 or 30 pro-Mubarak forces. We worked our way back into an alleyway and came up to the hotel overlooking this. We were told not to go on the balcony if you could spot us and come up here, but we are looking and we are watching. People are being hurt and nowhere to be seen security. The army has completely pulled back. The riot police is completely gone. I'm watching 2 army soldiers, 3, 4, 5. They are guarding the Egyptian Museum, which is what we're immediately opposite. They're making sure nobody comes in there, but it is chaos on the street. It is violent, and this is all boiling over now. We spoke with the people in favor of President Mubarak, and they were very passionate about their support for the president. There have been reports of extreme government support for these activists, that they were bussed in, organized, what have you. That could be very well true, but there's nothing phony or nothing forced about this battle. This is going on. It is going on for real, and we're watching it all unfold in front of us, and frankly, we're a bit of a prisoner here in this hotel too, but it's a good overlook. The rocks, they come pretty high, up around 50 feet or so, but we're at about 100 feet, so right. We are clear, but it is a swarming, ugly scene, and this chaos in Egypt is exactly that. We've called it chaos for a few days,
Greg,
but it's certifiable. Yes,
Greg, is this the first time that you've seen this in the week that you've been there? Is this the first time that you've seen this?
This is the first time we've seen individual against individual. First, what we saw was the anti-government protesters, the activists, battling with the security forces, that is, the riot police. Then we saw the military come in, and that calmed things down. The military today, for whatever reason, has stepped back. They've allowed the government, the pro-government activists, protesters, to surge into the square. Right. Initially, there was just conversation, faith. Now it's actual fighting. And I'm being pointed at up here on this balcony. Again, we're about 100 feet up there, spotting us, spotting our camera. I'm stepping back a little bit.
Yeah, be safe.
The hotel owner, in fact, is concerned that there's a hotel surging up inside this building.
All right, Greg, why don't you get into a place where you're safe? Dominic Di Natale is also there overlooking it. Dominic, we understand the protesters are throwing sticks and stones, and people are riding up, charging each other on horses and camels. Who seems to have more people in the square, the pro-government people or the anti?
It is the anti-government people that are the overwhelming majority, although there are some fresh supporters just below me here carrying a massive picture, a massive poster of Hosni Mubarak, and they intend quite clearly to march into the square themselves. But I would say just a fifth of these people are pro-government supporters. The rest are overwhelmingly anti-government supporters. They were there earlier on today. It was only later in the day that the pro-government supporters actually turned up. They're just massive numbers still gravitating towards the square. We saw some on the march coming out of the square. They seem to have gone off towards the west, actually, and it's west actually where the presidential palace is. We'll see if they actually make it all the way there, but there's a massive security cordon around the presidential palace. It's hard to imagine they'll get in. But since then, we've seen many more thousands gravitate towards the square. It's filling up again, guys.
Hey, Dominic, stay right there and listen in, because Greg Palcott's right in the middle of the frenzy on the ground. Greg, where is this clash heading?
Guys, what we're seeing now is more and more of the pro-Mubarak activists, protesters surge in. This can mean only trouble for the absolute center of the square. We're about 150 yards down the sort of entrance pedestrian walkway into the square, right opposite the museum. And I see them walking in. There is no clash immediately in front of us, but what we could see is more disturbance deeper into the square. Perhaps if you have a live camera, you might be able to see that. What we're seeing is the pro-Mubarak activists, protesters, stooges, however you want to describe them, could be overwhelming the anti-government activists. I'm looking down to see what we can see. and see whether that was a flare-up that will die down or whether it will continue. Right now, in front of me, it's stable, but I can tell you that the numbers are swinging way in the government favor. How they got here so organized, how they got here in this rapidity, we don't know.
But Greg, that's my question, Greg.
I've seen a lot of these things in places like Iraq prior to the liberation of Baghdad, and I know how a government can organize things. I don't have hard intelligence, although experts here today on the ground told me there was organization behind the pro-government forces. I'm going to hold off there until I have hard direct evidence of that. What I have evidence of is an absolute face-off. I'm going to move over here to the left side of my balcony so I can take a look exactly what's happening. Here we go. About 50 yards to the left of me, tanks, military vehicles, doing nothing. And now we're seeing the anti-government forces move down back towards the pro-government activists, and now the pro-government activists are running fast. Right. It is a panic scene here. People, I'm sure, we've seen already people hurt. It is not ending. I think I can be quiet for about 10 seconds here, put my phone up to the crowd, and you can hear it. Hold on. What we're seeing now is it's pure rocks back and forth. It's a battle here. It's a battle between the two sides, guys.
Hey, Greg, what I'm wondering is, doesn't this make you conclude that Mubarak definitely has the power of the army behind him? Because as the army pulled back and urged everyone to disperse, now suddenly we have pro-Mubarak demonstrators pushing back on those who want him out.
If the army wanted to stop this, obviously they can. They're a very strong army. We, in fact, are next, per se, by one army officer who helped us get into an alleyway and get us up to a hotel. And he said, hey, we kept everything peaceful yesterday. Today, we can't help you. So an army officer told me personally they can't keep calm. So that is the reality on the ground right now. And right now, the pro-government force is pushing right by me, throwing rocks. They had practice at this. We watched them Friday, but on Friday they were throwing rocks at riot police. Today they're throwing rocks at Egyptians. It is the Egyptian versus Egyptian right now.
All right. Meanwhile, Greg, stand by. Dominic Di Natale is also at a perch overlooking Tahrir Square right now. And Dominic, did you notice what Greg Palcott was talking about? How what started out as a small number of pro-government protesters has suddenly swelled to a number that he doesn't know where they all came from.
Absolutely. Where I'm standing on the 15th floor of the Ramses Hilton Hotel, I can see that there are large numbers of pro-Mubarak protesters gathering together. They gather in clusters of anywhere between 100 and 500. Someone seems to be organising them, telling them where to go, trying to encourage more people to swell the ranks, and then they start heading towards Tahrir Square. I've just seen a massive tidal surge of thousands of people rush and clash against each other at the entrance to the square. Clearly pro-Mubarak protesters and anti-government protesters simultaneously hitting each other face on. It seems that from a distance that there are organisers trying to get together large groups of Mubarak supporters and then send them in. I'm not entirely sure who the individuals are that are doing it. Earlier on we saw some very suspicious looking black SUVs which usually are used by the security forces, and some people from those cars came out and started directing people on where to run. Right now I'm looking at a group of about 200 people who've got a massive poster of Hosni Mubarak. They're hanging it to one of the bridges or one of the exit routes to the October the 6th bridge, and they are getting very, very rowdy and appear to be ready to join the rest of the throng in the main square.
You have to wonder what the political ramifications are of this to Dominic and to Greg, and we're trying to get Judy Miller here on the phone, because you have Mubarak coming out yesterday saying that he's not going to run for re-election in September. Judy Miller is now joining us on the phone, and this is my question to you, Judy. The political repercussions. You have Mubarak yesterday saying, hey, I'm out of here, ostensibly. Now it looks as if he may have orchestrated this pro-government rally against the anti-government protesters. What do you think?
Yes. Yes, Gretchen, this is exactly what's happening. Basically, this is the pro-Mubarak forces organized by the president and his national security forces to spark the kind of confrontation that will lead ordinary Egyptians to clamor for Hosni Mubarak to stay in office and reestablish order. That's what this is all about. It's a very crude, ugly ploy to perpetuate the man's final days. And it is truly sad after what we've seen in the squares of Cairo and Tahrir squares and other cities. This did not have to end this way, but it was kind of inevitable that the Central Security Forces would make a last stand, and you are watching it now.
Right. Judith, can you give me an idea of the people on the ground? For example, is this a society where it's common for families to have guns and they chose to leave them at home? And if the security forces begin firing, would the civilians who are protesting Mubarak's reign go back and get arms? And could this be man-on-man violence?
Well, first of all, it's not common for people living in the cities to have guns. I don't know who told you that, but there is no doubt that this will get increasingly violent unless the Central Security Forces are called off. These pro-Mubarak demonstrations were organized by the government.
And
well,
Judy, what does this put President Obama right now? Because he has placed personal phone calls to President Mubarak, and he sent over an ambassador who used to be in Egypt to tell Mubarak to go.
Yeah.
So where does this put the President of the United States today?
Well, what I think where this leaves the president is we have now, after Mubarak spoke last night, you saw what President Obama said, which was the transition must begin now. And that's not what President Mubarak wanted. He wanted a, quote, dignified exit.
Right. And I know
he
that...
wanted a dignified exit.
Yeah, there's a senior Arab diplomat who spoke to the Washington Post yesterday who said that Mubarak doesn't want to quit because he wants to be a former president. Judith, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
This guy said Mubarak doesn't want to be a former, he wants to be a former president, not a deposed president. And so now, on this same day that they turned on the internet again, don't you think when the average Egyptian sees what is happening in the streets and they go to their internet connections later today and into tonight, people are going to go, wait a minute, we got to take a stand, one side or the other, and this is just going to escalate.
That's exactly what the president wants. He believes that he has a silent majority of the 83 million Egyptians. He says, all right, let's just figure 1 million people are out in the streets. But there are the other 82 million Egyptians, and many of them are for me, and we haven't heard their voices. This is an attempt to bring them out and to have a kind of confrontation in a society which hasn't permitted a free and honest election. This is kind of the only response left, but it's likely to get ugly, ugly, ugly.
But Judy, it still doesn't say where America factors into this now. Now that this is going to be civil war, what's America going to do?
No, I'm not sure it's going to be civil war because ultimately it's the Egyptian military who will be taking a look at this and understand that if this escalates, they will be called upon to restore order. They will not want to fire on the Egyptian people. And at that point, I hope that they go to President Mubarak and say, Hosni, you've been a great leader for 30 years, but it is time to step aside to spare your people this bloodshed.
Right, Judith.
And that it is up to the Egyptian military to do the right thing for Egypt. We, the United States, can push. But guys, make no mistake, this is an Egyptian play. This is an Egyptian event, and we are marginal.
Diabolical.
And you know what? It's their country. Judith Miller, thanks. Dominic Dinatelli is right in the middle of the melee, perched above and safe. But Dominic, you're seeing some surging there, right?
That's right. It kind of comes in to and fro. You kind of see sort of things surge to the west and then suddenly surge to the east. So you're not entirely sure who's actually got the upper hand here. But all I can say is from where I see that just more and more crowds are joining this mass gathering. You know, it's turning into a collateral mass of very emotionally motivated, very emotionally charged people. And you're just going to kind of see, I think, a to and fro as one side tries and beats the other. There's enough room in the square for more people to gather there, but there's a standoff point on one of the main arteries going into the square, and that's where you're sort of seeing this constant to and fro as the crowd amasses, and one side seems to push harder than the other.
All right. Thank you, Dominic. I think we